Wrestling is filled with big personalities and long legacies, but sometimes the best stories come from the guys who weren't around long enough to even get a t-shirt printed. I'm your host, Frank Culbertson, and welcome back to Portland Wrestling Obscurities, forgotten, brief, and barely remembered. And today's trio includes a masked man with a name that raised eyebrows, a European grappler who made it to a Lucha Libre magazine cover, and a Canadian who took a detour to Acapulco for championship gold. Well, let's start in 1977 with a man who barely touched down in Portland before heading south of the border. In July 1977, Joe Palardy showed up in Portland and blinked out just as fast. His debut was a Saturday tag match alongside Bobby Kincaid against Lonnie Bain and Les Thornton. That's a rough welcoming party. Next, he lost a singles match to Lonnie Bain. Again, no shame there, and managed a time limit draw with Coco Samoa. And that was it. Palardy was in the Portland Sports Arena for about 10 days. Then he was gone. But where he went next, that's where it gets interesting. For just a few months later, in October 1977, Palardy defeated Ringo Mendoza in Acapulco, Mexico to win the NWA World Middleweight Championship. That's no small feat. Mendoza was a big deal. So while in Portland he didn't get to see his full potential, Palardy was no slouch. He just took his spotlight somewhere else. Next up, a true globetrotter who never made headlines but had a fascinating path. Let's talk about Tony Orford. Born into the business, his father was Sandy Orford, a European wrestler who trained none other than Shirley Crabtree, better known to the world as, yeah, that's right, Big Daddy. Sandy also played professional rugby. He had a very tough family. Tony began wrestling in Europe in the 1960s, then made his way to British Columbia by 1966. Mostly a prelim guy, he lost to Eric Froelich, Jack Pence, and Fred Barron. No shame in that lineup. But in 1968, he did something unexpected. He toured Mexico. He was even featured on the cover of Lucha Libre magazine in August 25th, 1968, under the name Tony Oxford, a rare honor for a foreign wrestler. By 1969, he found his way to Portland, where he had 6 recorded victories. And then it was over, just like that. Orford wrestled just 2 more matches in the next 3 years before seemingly stepping away for good. He never held titles, never cut wild promos. But from Europe to Mexico and Portland to Vancouver, Tony Orford left a quiet trail. And sometimes that's enough to earn a mention right here. Our last entry today is a name that still makes old school fans raise an eyebrow, Monte Zuma. But if you pull the mask off, you'll find a much more recognizable name underneath. El Olympico, real name Joey Correa. Correa started wrestling in 1964 and got hot in the early 70s with a run in the WWWF as El Olympico. He was athletic, skilled, and had that classic masked babyface appeal. But in January 1974, he came to Portland. And instead of continuing with a masked gimmick, he was rechristened Monte Zuma, a name that frankly feels like, well, a bad joke or a promoter's rib. Why not just keep the Olympico persona? Well, one theory is that Don Owen didn't like masked babyfaces. Outside of a very short-lived masked wrestler named the White Avenger, who became Bing Kai Lee, that tracks. Montezuma's time here was short, about 2 months. 1 recorded win over Ivan Zarnoff, also known as Beer the Lumberjack. Then in January 1975, he was back in the WWWF. So while Montezuma may sound like a joke name, El Olympico had the last laugh. He carved out a solid career and remains a fond memory for WWWF fans of that era. 3 men, 3 wildly different paths. One got a taste of Portland, then found gold in Mexico. One traveled continents, made a magazine cover, and quietly faded out. And one had his name changed to a punchline before bouncing back into prime time under a mask. These are the stories that get lost in the noise, but not here. I'm your host, Frank Culbertson. Thanks for riding along on this episode of Portland Wrestling Obscurities, forgotten, brief, and barely remembered. This show is based on the Encyclopedia of Portland Wrestlers by historian Mike Rogers, available now on Amazon. and new episodes drop every Tuesday and Friday. Listen and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your wrestling fix. And be sure to hit that follow button, because the next forgotten name might just be your new favorite story.